yourself. There's a big difference between being in a relationship, a partnership, whatever you want to consider that, and being in one that's committed to growth, committed to clearing the ego, committed to being supportive.
You're going to resolve it if you know it's for an opportunity for growth versus, this might not be my person. You see how different that is? And honestly, maybe it might not be your person, right? So that's a whole nother conversation. But if you quit the moment there's some conflict, you're never going to be in a long-term relationship.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another very special, as always, weekly live Next Level You podcast for week number 101. Tonight we are talking about staying on the same page as your partner. I don't know what the divorce rates are in the U.S., Alan, but I know they are quite high, and I think one of the reasons is because conflict resolution probably isn't a practice that a lot of couples have, but I know you work with a lot of couples, so I'm sure you can add some extra value to this. So go ahead, my friend.
Thank you, brother. So staying on the same page as your significant other, it's important to understand that we're going to take two approaches most likely on this. I'm usually going to go deeper understanding, and then Kevin's going to give you some tactics. And I'm assuming, Kev, you're probably going down the road of what do you do when conflict arises so that you can resolve it. I think I'm going to go to the deeper understanding of the why underneath why conflict is constantly arising. And so the very first thing, I have a short story here. I think this was last week. I want to say it was Saturday night or Friday night. I forget which. But Emilia and I had left for the gym. Typically we go to the gym together, but I think she was working late. So I left for the gym, and then we ended up meeting there. And I left the gym with her. So she got there like 10 minutes after me, and we ended up syncing up, doing a workout together, and then we left together. But we had separate cars. And we only live 2.5 minutes down the road from our gym. But we were walking in tandem, we were holding hands, and we were walking to our cars. And there was this guy who we were in the middle of a conversation who kind of made a joke. I forget what. He said something like, "Don't eat too much cake tonight," or something like that, some joke. And we were in the middle of a conversation, and we got kind of rattled by that. We're like, ha, 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 and we kept walking. And we immediately got into our cars. We said, like, bye, and then we, like, left. And when we got home, we have a 2-car garage, so I pulled up right next to her, and she was actually doing the fog on the window thing with, like, a little heart, which was cute. But when we got out of the car, I said, "Sweetheart, that was a little bit outside of alignment for me." And that's the first and only time I've ever left your side without kissing you goodbye. And I know we're only 2 minutes away, but God forbid anything bad happens. I would like to part from a place of telling each other we love each other and kissing. And she couldn't agree more, and she was so grateful. And we later unpacked it and realized why. We got kind of rattled by that random dude in the dark in a hoodie who just like made comments. And we're not used to leaving the gym in separate cars. But normally, we always take a moment before we leave each other's side, always. This is like a ritual. And we tell each other we love each other, and we always kiss. And we didn't. And I remember as she was leaving the parking lot, I was like, oh my goodness, if anything were ever to happen, I would be so regretful that I didn't take that moment with her. And I know that sounds like a small thing, but the lesson here is always being grateful. I remember what it was like, and I told Kevin this earlier, if it wasn't for Kevin teaching me about vulnerability and some of the tough conversations he and I have had many years ago, I might never have been able to attract a partner like Emilia. And, she's the greatest gift of my life. And if I ever lose sight of that, I'm not going to value it at the level that I should unless I remember what it was like before her. I remember what it was like to feel lonely. I remember what it was like to feel like I would never find my person. I remember what it was like to feel like I'm never going to find a partner as mission-driven or goal-oriented as me. I remember what it was like in past relationships where I never felt understood or valued at my true value. And so if you want to stay grateful for your partner, for your significant other, if you want to stay on the same page as them, you have to not let the law of familiarity creep in. Because whether it's when I first met Emilia all the way to now, almost 2.5 years later, I never want to lose sight of what I have. The moment I take her for granted is the moment I'm no longer earning my magnificent relationship, and I refuse to let that happen. And so whether it's a 2-minute drive without saying goodbye with a hug and a kiss, or it's, just taking her for granted in other little ways, I will not do that. I will not let that happen. And so that's the first lesson, is just stay grateful. Stay grateful. Reflect on what it was like before you had your partner. There's that great quote by Tony Robbins where he says, do what you did in the beginning and there won't be an end. At the beginning, you're so grateful just to talk to them. And now you maybe live with them and maybe you take it for granted a little bit. We're all guilty of that at times. Don't let that happen. Stay grateful.
Strong work, Alan.
Thank you, man.
Tara and I have a little thing too. If she tends to leave the house more than I do because I don't go anywhere and do anything. And it's a running joke when she is saying, hey, I'm getting ready to leave. I always run out there and make sure I kiss her and say goodbye and say I love you. So we share the same sentiment as you. So
super important.
Yes, it's very important. As you know, if you're a listener of the show, if you're in Next Level Nation, Alan and I have the live event feels. Anytime we're doing anything with a live event, it's quite overwhelming. There's so many things going on behind the scenes, venue tours, speakers coming in, flying in, driving in, lodging, all of that happy jazz. And it's very heavy. It can be a very, very heavy time for Alan and myself because there's just so much going on with the podcast and clients and all that stuff. And I remember our last live event, the last live event that we co-hosted, Top Notch Live. I remember that Tara and I did a check-in after that, and it was just, I was not very present. I was grinding, and I was in a very tough state. And I remember when it came to the love and connection and quality time, I think I got a 3 out of 10. So we would rate each other on how well we were getting our needs met. And for her quality time, love and connection, I got 3. And it was brutal, very painful. It hurt me very, very badly. Now, moving into this season of live events, one thing that I've been trying to do better, and not just the live event, but everything in general, is sharing my state. So being proactive with my state. And I'm going to call it, this is going to be my thing, Alan. Don't take this from me because I'll find you. State your states, okay? So anytime I'm struggling, anytime I'm overwhelmed, this was a very, very common practice when Alan and I were not as financially successful. I would say, hey, babe, I'm struggling because of blank. Because my car is stalling every time I slow down and I don't have enough money to fix it. I'm overwhelmed because we have more clients than we ever have, and I'm struggling to keep up with it all. Because I think what happens is, if you think about the times where you've had an argument with a loved one, your significant other, anybody, what is the common through line? You're probably overwhelmed, you're probably underslept, you're probably stressed, you're probably hungry. There is something probably to do with your state that is making you operate in a different way than you normally would. And at least if you put that out on the table and say, hey, just so you know, I'm going through blank. I apologize if I come off as short-tempered or if I'm not as present or if I'm struggling to pay attention. I think that you can nip a lot of it in the bud by just saying that right off the top. And this is the other thing too. Put yourself in the opposite position. If your significant other comes to you and says, hey, I had a really, really, really rough day at work today, and here's a list of things that happened, you're going to approach every situation a little bit differently. You're going to be more patient, you're going to be more empathetic, you're going to be more understanding, and you're probably going to be more loving and supportive and kind. So it's very important to state your states. I think you can avoid a lot of confrontation, a lot of rapport breaks if you do that correctly.
Couldn't agree more. Emilia and I do this thing where we ask ourselves from 0 to 10, where are you at? So we had our families over for dinner on Saturday night, and it's a whole thing, hosting, and it's my mom and her parents, and it was a wonderful evening, but she would ask me in the middle of the evening, where are you at? And what that means is, where is your cup at? Is it full? Are you a full cup? And so what we would do is, where are you at from 0 to 10? And I would say, I actually told her I was actually very high. I think I was at like a 9, and it's draining slowly. And so where are you at? Where is it headed? And at what rate? So if you're at a 3 draining quickly, I know to be extremely supportive and not to dump more on you, for lack of better phrasing. If you're at an 8 or a 9, okay, let's go to the gym after this, right? And so I couldn't agree more. Understanding where you're at, self-awareness, and understanding where your partner is at is so important. Emilia does this all the time, especially during live event season, which is like, we're 2 weeks out right now. So she's like, how can I support you?
Same.
How can I support you? How can I support you? One of the best questions ever. And she's not saying that or asking that because she's just asking it to placate or to be nice. She actually wants to know, like, what can I do to support you? Sundays are usually for Emilia and I, and for house optimization and for food prep and for all these things, grocery shopping, laundry. And last night, Kevin and I were working for, 5 hours, 6 hours, something like that. Right? And so that was how, when she said, how can I support you? I said, I'm going to need Sunday evening, Kevin and I. And I know that Taryn, same deal. She ended up coming in and was very supportive when you had to work late on a Sunday, because normally Sunday is not that. But it's live event season. We're 2 weeks out. Okay. One of the other things about staying on the same page as your significant other. So you've heard people say, well, we're just not on the same page, or we're not on the same wavelength, that kind of thing. There's always one root cause that has to do with one of these three things. Credit to Emilia for this. Core aspirations, core values, and core beliefs. When you're not on the same page or you're not on the same wavelength, it means that you're outside of alignment. And that can be because of three different reasons. So imagine you're in the car with your significant other and you're driving to the same destination and you like to listen to the same music, but you disagree on the route you're taking. So let's say you're driving from Boston to LA and you're going to LA, both of you going to LA. Both of you love country music, but your significant other wants to take the northern route and go through Wyoming, and you want to take the southern route because you like warmer weather and you want to go outside and take a walk in between drive time. So that's a core belief in conflict. In other words, you're going to the same destination, same goal. You are listening to the same music, core value, same passion, but you have a different belief on how to get there. Okay? Second scenario, same car, same goal, but one person loves country music and the other person loves hardcore metal and hates country music. See how there's a core value in conflict? But you're taking the same route. You both want to go the southern route. You both want to go to LA. Great. But you can't take the same car now because one person loves heavy metal and hates country music and the other person loves country music. See how this is an analogy of a core value in conflict? If you don't reconcile these core values, core beliefs, and core aspirations that are in conflict, of course you're not going to be on the same page. Last scenario. You both love the same music. You both love country music. You both want to take the southern route, but one of you wants to go to Vegas. The other one wants to go to LA. So you have two different destinations. Guess what? The person who wants to go to LA needs to take a different car once you get to Vegas. Because otherwise you're not in the same page, aka not in the same car. So you can see how this analogy works. If you don't have common core aspirations, common core values, common core beliefs that are in alignment with your significant other, you're always going to feel like you're not on the same page. And quite frankly, that's why some of my past relationships were such a struggle for me, is because my core aspirations were extremely, extremely high, and I was extremely mission driven, and they didn't necessarily have similar core aspirations, and that provided challenges. Why do you always have to work so much? Why do you always have to XYZ? So again, Kevin's going to talk a little bit more about tactics here. I'm talking about why is there conflict? Why don't you feel like you're on the same page? Maybe you're going to the same destination and taking the same route, but maybe you like different music. That's okay. Maybe there's you like heavy metal and I love country, but maybe we both love peaceful piano. There's always a way to integrate these things, but you can't integrate what you don't identify is not on the same page. Quick story. Emilia and I created our 10 commandments of core values at the beginning of our relationship, and adventure was one of them. And Kevin was like, hey man, I've traveled with you, and we're on the Pacific Coast Highway. This is many years ago. And Kevin was like, hey man, we should go to dinner tonight. Let's just treat ourselves. Let's go to the top of the side of a mountain overlooking the ocean. Let's go to a fancy dinner. And I was like, why? Why do you want to do that, right? And he's like, well, I was talking to Taryn, and it seems like we don't celebrate enough. I feel like we should celebrate, right? And it'll make us feel wealthy. It'll be a whole thing. Great experience. And I basically said I don't want to do that because to me, I don't like to necessarily, I'm not as into adventure. That's really what it comes down to. I'm not a big adventurer. I'm very mission driven. And so Kevin kind of, for lack of better phrasing, called me out. He's like, dude, that 10th one, adventure, isn't really a core value of yours. You're probably telling yourself a story. And so I went to Emilia and I talked to her. And I said, honestly, I don't think adventure is as big of a deal to me, but if it's important to you, it is important to me because you're important to me. And so now we have an adventure budget, and every quarter we go on an adventure, but we make sure we have good Wi-Fi so that I can work on Saturdays. And she works on Saturdays too. So we integrated. The point is you're not going to solve a problem that you don't admit you have. And I think a lot of couples pretend they're on the same page when they're really not, so they never actually identify the root cause of why they're not.
And in fairness, Alan, when I asked you, you did say, if it's important to you, we can go. So I want to make sure I give you credit. You did agree to go to dinner with me, but then I think we probably ended up getting In-N-Out Burger or something. I don't know. But who knows?
Appreciate that.
Of course, of course. So to add on to Alan's point, I remember when I was younger, Alan, I wonder if this is your experience, it was almost like asking about a partner's past, a significant other's past, was off limits. It's like you can't talk about your past relationships. You can't talk about what you've been through. But part of being on the same page, staying on the same page, getting back on the same page is understanding what page your partner is on. What do they value? How do they feel loved? How do they feel supported? What makes them feel safe? What experiences have they had in the past? What experiences are they trying to avoid in the future? All of that stuff. That's a super, super interesting thing that we learn through self-improvement, through personal development. You're going to learn a ton about yourself, and you're going to learn a ton about your past, and you're going to learn a ton about your conditioning. It's also as important, just as important, to make sure that you're learning about your significant other through your conversations, through your conflict, through your experiences, through what you're learning. So that's a whole nother thing. And Alan went more into like the core beliefs, core aspirations, and core values, but really check in with, okay, how does my partner value this? How do they receive love? We've talked about the 5 love languages. There's a bunch of different exercises you can do, but make sure that if you don't know your partner as well as you want to, that you commit to the never-ending pursuit of that. If you have a significant other, you will always have something to learn about them. Always. And they will always have something to learn about you, and you'll have something to learn about yourself in that area too. So it's a never-ending process. Make sure that you're actually committed to the long haul of this, and that way the pages are always going to change, and the opportunities are going to change, and the context is going to change, the locations and the possible arguments and conflict that you have. But as long as you are committed to that, that's why you can succeed. I'm convinced that most people just aren't quote unquote committed enough. There's a big difference between being in a relationship, a partnership, whatever you want to consider that, and being in one that's committed to growth, committed to clearing the ego, committed to being supportive, committed to being non-judgmental, committed to being the best version of yourself for your partner. So really check in with that one. Next Level Nation, I know many of you out there probably don't feel super supported. You probably feel alone, and you don't feel like you're going to be successful. And what's worse is, even if you do find success, you're probably going to be celebrating by yourself. What if you're just in the wrong rooms? I remember the first live event I went to. For the first time in my life, I finally felt like I fit in. I felt like I was valued for the person that I wanted to be, and big dreams were not only okay, but they were par for the course. That live event changed my life more than anything. And I was so afraid to go, but Alan convinced me to go, and since I had somebody to go with, it was much, much easier. Next Level Live is March 26th in Worcester, Mass. If you're scared to come alone, bring a friend. We're giving away 5 free tickets, but we're only giving them away to our local listeners. We want to meet each and every one of you. Make sure you get a free ticket while you can, because when they're gone, they're gone.
It is first come, first serve. Click the link in the show notes. It'll take you to the landing page. Put quantity 2, grab a friend, and put promo code local listener. It will make checkout $0. Get your ticket as soon as possible. Again, first come, first serve. And local listener, you can copy and paste from the show notes.
We'll see you there.
I'll never forget, Kev, when you and I were in New York City. Not New York City, I'm sorry, New York. And we were visiting Tori Leto, who, by the way, is the headliner for Next Level Live, March 26th, coming up in 2 weeks.
That's true.
And we're at her office building where she runs her private practice. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist. And I remember asking her, after a decade of coaching couples, doing therapy with couples and individuals about their intimate relationships, like, what is the most common misunderstanding? Kevin knows this. That's my favorite question. If you're a listener or viewer of this show, I ask every guest who's in a particular industry that, like, what would someone never know unless they were in your industry? It's like one of my favorite questions in the world. And she said, honestly, it's this idea that you're going to succeed in your relationship without any work. For some reason, we understand that if you want to be in shape, you have to work hard. In our careers, if you want a successful career, you have to work hard. And yes, I do think some of us have lost sight of that, by the way. But in an intimate relationship, you're not going to flourish at a high level without any work. You have to work on your relationship. You have to work on your physique. You have to work on your career. You have to work on your business. For some reason, somewhere along the lines, we've lost sight of the work. And so one of the reasons why you're not on the same page as your significant other is what Tori said. You're not consistently and sustainably putting in the work. We have Relationship Talks clients that we coach, and we've done, at this point, almost 100 sessions, hour long, with couples and individuals all over the world about their intimate relationships. And I'm telling you, sometimes there's a partnership where only one person's willing to do the work. I'll never forget, at Top Notch Live, Tori Leto is on stage, and she said, the purpose of an intimate relationship is growth. And I was like, When you come from that frame, all of a sudden, all the challenges become an opportunity for growth. And so Emilia and I, and that's my third point here, we both come from that place. The purpose of this relationship is for growth and contribution. It's for a mission-centered paradigm that's bigger than ourselves. The we, the business we started together, is predicated on the we is greater than the me. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. We are 10 times more capable together than we are apart, but it's only because we're both individually willing to do the work and because our relationship is about growth. Whereas in the past, Kev, none of my past relationships felt like that was the same paradigm. And that's a testament to me back then as well as them. But I'll tell you what, if your relationship, if you and your significant other were to sit down and say, what is the purpose of our relationship? What is the meaning of our love? And you came together and were like, honestly, I want to grow to the maximum potential we can. I want to contribute as much as we can to the world, and I want to improve the quality of our lives and our family's life as much as possible. If you sat down and lived from that paradigm together and decided in advance to do that, and this is Tori's words, not mine, the people who focus on an intimate relationship being for the purpose of growth always succeed at a higher level in their relationship than the people who don't. And it makes sense because if you have a conflict, which is inevitable, okay, you're going to resolve it if you know it's for an opportunity for growth versus, this might not be my person. You see how different that is? And honestly, maybe it might not be your person, right? So that's a whole nother conversation. But if you quit the moment there's some conflict, you're never going to be in a long-term relationship.
It's interesting, Alan, because as human beings, we have identities. But as a partnership or a relationship, you have an identity too. Mm-hmm. And I think that you've coached many relationships, many partnerships, many couples. What are the most common identities as a couple that you and Emilia have seen?
They usually, if there is constant conflict, it's usually they're operating from a different paradigm. So for example, usually the individual who hires us is more growth oriented than the other one, but if that person was more transparent about that, the other person usually would jump on the growth train, and that's what we've found. And so that's what I've noticed, is that very rarely are individuals operating from the same paradigm. So, and this is true for business partnerships too, and I'll be quick about this, Kev, but like to your point, we all have an identity, but so does every relationship, so does every business. Yep. So there's Kevin's identity, there's my identity, there's Next Level University's brand, which is the identity of the business. So when you think of Apple, Apple has its own identity. It has its own brand. And ideally, Kevin and I are operating from the same paradigm, and we are. And it's based on a common wound of self-worth and not having fathers growing up and being raised by two women in a challenging small town, and a common aspiration to bring personal development to as many people as possible, because that's what we needed. We needed guidance. We needed learning. We needed personal development. We needed holistic self-improvement. So we have an identity. Next Level University is the most consistent. We're all about getting to the next level. We believe more in who you aspire to be than who you used to be, right? That's our identity. That's our brand. And so every intimate relationship has that too. And I think if couples aren't on the same page at their core, it's very hard to be on the same page in the day-to-day lifestyle preferences of living together and all that stuff.
Yeah, because your behaviors aren't on the same page. Makes sense. Mm-hmm. Makes sense. As you know, if you're watching this, I'm a cat dad. I would say potentially one of the best cat dads on the face of the earth. I know Alessandro would probably fight me for that, but we can do it if you want to do it, brother. Let me know. But so Tara and I have something we call, it's a relationship agreement. And we heard this on another podcast, so I can't take credit for it. But it's you sitting down with your partner and saying, okay, Kevin is going to do the dishes. Taryn is going to do the sheets and the comforter for laundry. In the morning, Kevin does the litter box. At night, Taryn does the litter box. It's you sitting down and making sure that there's no uncertainty or lack of clarity when it comes to what's going to get done around the house. And it's been very, very helpful for us. And we heard that on a podcast episode. But the rule is what we both agreed to, what we both signed up for, is I will do the litter box in the morning. Taryn will do the litter box at night. The other morning I woke up, and I think Taryn went to bed early. She went to bed before me, and she didn't do the litter box before she went to bed. Now, there's two thoughts when you're getting ready to do the litter box. One thought is, classic. She didn't do it last night. I don't have to do it this morning because she's got to do it. She's got to pay her dues. And then the other part is, look, we're on the same team. She would do it for me. Okay? That's the one I chose. I chose we're on the same page. She would do it for me. I'm supposed to do it anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. So remembering that you and your partner quite literally are on the same team. And to Alan's point, the point of this team, the point of this sport, the point of this relationship is growth, and growth in success, and growth in fulfillment, and growth in alignment. And I think a lot of us, whether it's through ego or whatever it may be, I think we lose sight of that. This morning, Taryn ended up sleeping in a little bit because we went to bed late, but I got up and went to the gym. And before I left, I took her AirPods and I charged them. I put them on the charger because I'm thinking to myself, well, tomorrow when we go to the gym, I don't want her AirPods to be dead. And I have taken ownership. I have taken leadership in the role of getting us to the gym. Because she said, hey, I just need a little bit of extra accountability. Can you help me? And I said, I will have your shoes out. I'll have your water made. I will have your AirPods out because I want to support you in that. That's important to me. Can it be a pain in the butt for me to do all that running around in the morning? Sure. But her and I are on the same team, and she would do that for me. And the same team is the same page. So understand that. Next time you have a thought of, well, I'm not going to do this because, or my partner should have done this, remember, and hopefully it's this way, remember your partner would do the same for you. They would take care of you if you forgot to do what you were supposed to do. They would take care of you if it was going to make your day a little bit easier. They would take care of you if it was going to make you feel thought of, and it's something that you value. We're playing a team sport. A relationship is a team sport. And I think that's why it's so much harder, because you're not just playing by yourself, you're playing with somebody else. So remember, you're on the same team. That will help you focus on the things that really matter. And just like anything else, the other point of a relationship is to add value to somebody else's life. And that's what you're doing here anyway.
Mm-hmm. Selfishness in a relationship is a terrible habit. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts because of both people consistently contributing and wanting to go above and beyond. Whether it's the same page or the same wavelength or the same team or in alignment, it's all saying the same thing. It's you're communicating effectively, you're working as a team towards common goals. And them winning is you winning, and you have to see it that way. If it's a win-lose or a lose-win, it's a lose-lose. If it's a win-win, that's going to succeed long-term. And if there ever is a lose-win situation, you can identify why and rectify. Identify, rectify. So we had a client who is an amazing couple, and they're doing phenomenal, and they were heading on a trip. Before the trip, the female in the relationship planned the trip really well and is very, very proactive at planning ahead. The guy in the relationship, not so much. And the girl in the relationship left her cereal bowl out so that in the morning she could wake up, have her cereal, and go to the gym and get ready and go off to the trip. The guy in the relationship took the cereal bowl. Super simple. Took the cereal bowl, ate his cereal, no big deal. The girl in the relationship got mad. And it has nothing to do, and you don't know this at first, right? Because it's like, in her head, she's like, well, why am I so angry? It's just a cereal bowl. Who cares? No big deal. We now have a new saying. At the We in Relationship Talks, we have a new saying. It's never about the bowl. It turns out that there was a bug in the garden, small little bug, but those little bugs can take the garden if they multiply, if they grow. And you got to identify them and kill the bugs. Otherwise, your garden, your love, your relationship will erode from the inside out, and you don't want that. The bug in the garden was this person was way more proactive when it comes to planning getaways than the partner. And it always kind of bothered the partner who was more proactive that the other partner was so reactive, because the person who was planning way in advance wanted to have a wonderful morning and a wonderful day and wanted everything to go smoothly. And the person flying by the seat of their pants was making that really, really challenging. Frustration is an indicator of innovation. Every single time Emilia and I or Kevin and I are frustrated, what we do is we go back to the drawing board and we get fascinated. Okay, Kevin's frustrated. Why? Okay, why? Okay, why? You get to the root cause. Oh, okay, I didn't realize that was bothering you so much. Okay, what are we going to do about it? All right, let's improve. So that's where innovation comes in. Frustration leads to fascination, which leads to innovation. Because when you know the root cause of the frustration, now you know what to fix. And so now this couple, from now on, when they do trips, this other person is going to plan way more in advance. And now this person is becoming more proactive in the rest of their life too, which is actually compounding into their career success as well. So you got to understand that that's, again, another good example of your intimate relationship will make you better if you let it. Again, your intimate relationship will make you better if you let it. So when you're frustrated, it's never about the bowl. Figure out what it's really about. Get to the root cause, identify and rectify that.
And when you get there, everything else gets a little bit easier. When Tara and I went away, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks ago, I don't remember, but we went to northern New Hampshire, and we went straight from our home to the mountain because we went snowboarding. And the night before, Taryn said, hey, what time do we have to leave by? Because I tend to do the logistics. And I said, we have to leave by, I think we said 6:45 if we want to get there for opening. And she was running a little bit behind. And when we got there, she's like, oh, I'm sorry I made us late. And I was like, it's not that big of a deal. I said, we were going to be late probably anyway because I had to stop and get coffee and a donut and a muffin, whatever I was eating. But it's one of those things of, I appreciate the ownership. I appreciate the ownership, but it's not a big enough deal for us to have a real conversation over. It's really not that big of a deal. Yeah, we got here 20 minutes late. There's nobody here. It's not a big deal in the grand scheme of things. So to that point, you have to de-escalate situations pretty quickly. The quicker you de-escalate something, the less opportunity there is to create some sort of resentment or buildup. I'm very proud of myself, Alan, because I always forget the word resentment. That's the first time I got it without saying, hey, what's that word?
Strong work.
I appreciate that very much. The other morning, I was in the kitchen, and I was making this protein muffin thing from Trader Joe's. It's just I don't know how to explain it, but it has powder in it. And when I was putting it in the microwave, I got a little powder on the counter. And after it came out, I stirred it up and I said, num, this will be good. And I began to walk to the office because it was time to get to work. And Taryn said, hey, babe, just so you know, there's a little powder on the counter. And I said, so what? It's the big deal. It's not that big of a deal. And she said, no, I was just letting you know. And I said, I just don't understand why it was a big deal. And again, I realized my ego was flaring and we had a conversation. I said, I'm sorry. Quite literally, I'm not starving because there are people out in the world starving. I'm not starving, but I'm very, very hungry. And I apologize for my ego flaring. Now, let's unpack the layers. I am the one who does the dishes and I usually clean the counter. So in my mind, it's not that big of a deal because I'm going to clean the counter anyway. Well, I didn't know she had just cleaned the counter. So that's why she gave me that reaction. I responded with something that I thought was certain, and we quickly came to a resolution and we reconnected. So I think that breaking rapport in some way, shape, or form is always going to be part of relationships, because sometimes you're going to tell somebody a truth and it's going to break rapport, but how quickly can you reconnect? How quickly can you find conflict resolution? That is, I believe emotional mastery is such an important facet when it comes to relationships, because guess what? I mean, whether you want to admit it or not, you will be wrong eventually in a relationship. Whether it's a business relationship, an intimate relationship, you will be wrong. On the other end, you will be right, and you will have the opportunity to shove that in somebody's face if you want. You have to handle both of those the same way. You don't want to create a wound by saying, oh my goodness, I knew I was right the whole time and blah, blah, blah. And you don't want to create a wound on the other end by saying something with ego. So really, really lean into the ownership part. If you want to stay on the same page with your significant other, business partner, whatever it may be, you have to own when you're wrong. And honestly, on the other end, you have to gently own when you're right. You don't have to shove it in somebody's face on either end. And I'm definitely guilty of both of those in my past, but that's something I'm constantly working on to make sure I do not repeat that and ruin this amazing relationship I have.
So it's after the gym one night, and Emilia and I's gym is right next to the grocery store. And I'm like, I want chocolate milk. Love chocolate milk. I have chocolate milk almost every night. Honestly, obsessed with it.
You're like a child.
I know. It's great. And I'm like, I'm going to run into the grocery store, get some chocolate milk. And she's like, okay, you're going to take the bags, because we bring our own bags because we don't want to waste plastic. And I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm just going to grab chocolate milk. I don't need the bags. I go in, and then I end up FaceTiming her. Is there anything else we need? and I end up with a whole cart of groceries, which is awesome. And then I got back to the car, and I'm like, she knew. She always knows. And so we call it AWA. Emilia has this incredible foresight that I still to this day don't know if I can fully explain. I'm good at anticipating the future and calculating and anticipating outcomes. So if you're playing a video game and you've played it enough times to know where the bad guys are coming, I'm good at anticipating outcomes. Something that she knows how to predict the future. I'm not even going to go down that rabbit hole. The point is that trust your partner. You have to trust your partner when she or he is more competent than you. When it comes to finance and business and math, I am the guy. I am the leader. She lets me pilot those things. We're in front of the whiteboard, and I'm doing business models, and I'm doing finance, and I'm doing extrapolation and graphs and math all the time. But when it comes to that stuff, I've just learned Emilia knows something that I don't. So I'll ask her, what does AWA say? AWA is our alter ego for her highest self. AWA is from Avatar. I don't know if you've ever seen. Okay, so it's from Avatar. Anyways, the point is we used to call it spiritual Fifi.
I remember that.
So now it's AWA. So anyways, what does AWA say? AWA says to take the bags. Okay, perfect. I thought I was just going to go in for chocolate milk. Somewhere she knew that I was going to end up with a boatload of groceries. And I just learned how to trust her. So if you want to stay on the same page as your significant other, trust them in their genius zone. Learn about where they're competent. Learn about where they're extraordinary. Learn about what they know more than you. And then learn about where they don't. And then be okay with, hey, can I grab the baton here? I remember, I'll tell this quick story too. So Emilia and I started a podcast together called the Conscious Couples Podcast. Huge shout out to Next Level Podcast Solutions. It's interesting being a client in your own company. It's amazing what we do over there. Shout out to Ron and Kev, because I obviously don't run that department. My point is this. When we were first launching a show, Emilia was driving. She was piloting. And I had to step back for a second. I'm like, sweetheart, first my ego flared a little bit. It's like, do you know that we produce 17 shows and we've done thousands of episodes and all that stuff? And it's like, wait. To be honest, sweetheart, do you feel like your awareness is higher on how to launch a podcast than mine? And she's like, oh, hell no. Not even close. I was like, do you mind if I pilot and you co-pilot right now? And so she's like, no problem. And she passed the baton. It's really just the marker of the whiteboard at the end of the day. But she let me lead. The person in the relationship with the higher awareness is supposed to be leading. When we go to the gym, sometimes I let her lead, but for the most part, I'm the one checking in on our form. I'm the one choosing the workouts. When it comes to counting calories, I'm doing that. I'm not just giving her the fish, though. I'm teaching her to fish as well. Last point here. Where are you the most competent? Where is your partner the most competent? And then how can you share your competence in a way without ego that makes the whole greater than the sum of its parts? Emilia is so much better than me in so many ways, in so many areas, but vice versa is also true. You're supposed to complement each other's weaknesses, not make you feel bad about them. I don't want Emilia to feel bad because she's not as good at math as I am. That's my jam. Instead, I want to lift her up in that weakness, just like she's not going to make me feel bad when I am not as proactive as she is in certain things like grocery shopping, right? That's the understanding here. You want to stay on the same page, same wavelength, same team. You have to have communication. You have to have trust. You have to be coming from the same growth-oriented paradigm. And you have to have emotional regulation and low ego. And if you do those things, you're going to have a magnificent relationship because that's the point. The point is to have the most magnificent relationship possible.
And last thing, have the tough conversations. If you are not with a partner you can have tough conversations with, in the long run, you're probably going to be in trouble. And
for sure,
start with minor, small difficulties and work your way up. At the beginning, everything is a little bit difficult if you're not on the same wavelength. So understand that.
At one point, group coaching was just a dream of Kevin and I's. And as of Tuesday of this week, we will officially have graduated 50 people from group coaching. This is an incredibly well-polished product. We have improved drastically. We have a new champion on the team, Greg, as an assistant coach. Join us for Group 6. We only ever do one group per quarter. And like I said on Book Club this past Saturday, if you remember that level in Mario Kart 64 where you could do a booster through the middle of the island, but you needed a mushroom in order to get up that ramp, and it looked like you were losing when you were in the center on the map, but then when you come out on the other side, you're ahead of everyone else. Group coaching is literally designed to be that analogy. It's the mushroom that you need to get the shortcut. Now, it's not really a shortcut because Kevin and I don't believe in shortcuts, but it definitely is going to accelerate and make you ahead of other people. What you can do with a group of like-minded people is so much bigger and so much better than what you can do alone. That's just a fact. I've seen it time and time again. Group coaching, Group 6, starts April 19th.